Good morning, everyone. Uh, Today we're going to go through a demonstration of UV mapping in Maya 2010. Now, I have a more modern version of Maya, but we're going to use 2010 because that is what most people are using to get their stuff into Second Life. The project here is a JU87B2 Stuka that we are going to put into Second Life probably next week for Tumansky Heavy Industries, THI, which is my airplane company on Second Life. So, right now, the plane has not been connected and the geometry has been mirrored. If we just do one side, we can mirror the other side and only have to do half the work. So, each object in Second Life has only two materials, but keeping your materials count low is a good practice for any game engine sort of work. So what we have is the fuselage, horizontal stabilizers, wings, guns, wheel spats, wheels, air mover, propeller for the Jericho trumpet, and the rest of the Jericho trumpet is part of the leg. Then we have the propeller and spinner. The fans you see here are for what's called a blur map, so when the plane is flying, the props are blurred. I may show you that in video later. Anyway, so let's get started. Now, the first thing we need to do is to organize the materials in such a way that each material will have its own separate map. Now, in discussions with my scripter on Second Life, we want to keep the textures as large as possible so that markings, small labels, and details will show up as crisply as possible. So the plan is to break out the wings, the horizontal stabilizer, and even the rudder as one material, and the fuselage as another material. Because the propeller is going to move, that will be a separate material altogether. And the wheel spats and wheels will be probably included on the fuselage map. Actually, the wheels won't, because the wheels have to turn through a seem to rotate using texture movement. They are A, already mapped, and B, will have to be their own material. So, to create a material in Maya, you go to Window, Rendering Editors, and you go to the third item down, which is called Hypershade. This is your material editor. Up here is the visual list of materials you're going to work for, and you can see here we have the materials that make up the template frame for the plane, so that the plane is built. And I covered this briefly in an earlier lesson, and I can cover it later in more detail. on how to set these up. But we'll go ahead and turn that off because that's going to get in the way. So, again, Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. On the left-hand panel is the types of materials that you can create for surfaces. It also covers volumetric materials, displacement, and 2D textures. You can also create mental ray nodes, but that will be handled in a separate lesson dealing with what's called ambient occlusion baking. So, we're going to start making materials to cover our answering a few questions in chat. We're going to create materials for our different sub-assemblies. So, as you can see, double-clicking on any of the materials after creating them pops their attribute editor. So, we'll name this wing surfaces. And when you complete this, this is very important, hit tab to tab out of that. Because if you don't and write wing surfaces and go to color, you'll get to change your color or add your file. Now, to organize materials, and this may sound kind of goofy, I organize them by rainbow as well as number, so that the first color for wing and surfaces will be the first color in the rainbow, which is red. And you go up here, you can either use the color picker at the top, or you can make a custom color around here, and this little thumbnail here will show you what it is. But I'm going to stick with the chosen red. And so wing surfaces is red. I hit accept. The color is okay. And I slide this over and I select what I want to go on the wings. And I want the rudder, but I'll go to that later. So we'll go to, on here, if you right click on the material either in the workspace area here or up here in the window, but we'll do it in the workspace because that's within the window we can see. But if you right click on it, go up to assign to material, assign material to selection, and as you can see, the wings have turned red. Now these offside surfaces are instances, but instances don't accept the materials. But I'll go ahead and make them part of the same just for clarity's sake. Now I'm going to create the next material for the fuselage. And I go to Lambert and I double click on that, and that creates a new Lambert, which on the workspace and in the material window is called Lambert 8. But that doesn't tell me anything. So anytime you create something, name it so you know where it is. Keeps things organized. So this will be called fuselage. tab out, hit color, and there's no orange here, but I'm going to go ahead and make one by going to the color picker and sliding right along the maximum saturation, right in between the yellow point and the red point, until I get a nice orange color. Then I hit accept, and I go down to the fuselage, hit Q to just select things, and then I right click on it and I go assign material to selection. So I think I want the tail wheel strut, and that little fairing on the bottom to be part of the fuselage material. So we'll go ahead and assign those as well. I'm not sure where I'm going to put the wheel spats, so I'm going to leave those out for now. But the next material is I'm going to use for the propeller. And I'm going to go ahead and go to a yellow, accept that. Go ahead and rename this to propeller. Now this is going to be a little different because I want the blades but not the fan or the spinner. So what I do is I come in close and I select one face holding down the shift and control keys, and I select one face from each blade of the propeller. And then I hold down the shift key and I hit the period key, which is a angle bracket if you hold down the shift key, but the period key, and I just keep selecting it to expand the selection. Hit the F key to focus on the selection, and as you can see, it's just the blades. So again, rendering editor, hypershade, propeller, right click, assign material to selection, and now all the propeller blades are yellow. Whoops, wrong click. Okay, everything's running. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the spinner, and we'll do the same trick. Select one face, hold down the shift key, and hit the period key multiple times until the spinner is fully selected. Then we'll go ahead and create a new material for for the spinner. Rendering editors, hypershade. Double click on Lambert to make a new Lambert. Name that spinner. Tab out. Hit color. And select the most hideous light green I can. Accept it. Oops. And then select the spinner again. Right click, assign material to selection, and the spinner is now mapped. Now to do the fan, the same thing, but I'm going to do it slightly differently because the fan is kind of in the way. We'll call this prop fan underscore fan. Tab out, double click, and I want to save blue to do the glass. So I'm going to move it into a more teal, I suppose, and hit that. Select one face in each of the fans, and then again hold down the shift key and hit the period key multiple times. Make sure it's selected, and assign material to the prop fan. Now I'm going to go back and edit that material a little bit because I want that to be transparent to reflect what's going on with the propeller. So you have under color a slider that says transparency. So if I slide this, I can change the transparency of the material until it's completely gone, but I want it just a hint of it there, so we'll do that there. Now to get out of this, right click on the object, pick object mode out of the pie menu, and make sure that's all set. Now these are 3 separate material IDs that are on one object. You can have up to 8 in Second Life, but the more materials you have that are not plain colors, that's the more maps you have and the more map loading time, and the more it hits the asset server. So let's hit the off side. And those materials are all assigned. So yeah, it's garish, but everything's organized. And organization, especially in something as complicated in Maya, is kind of important. Let's do the glass. Now the glass is going to be handled the same way that the propeller was. So select the object, right click, go to face, bring up the rendering editor again, Hypershade, make a new material. We're going to call this glass. Tab out, hit the color. We'll start with that aqua, but I want more of a sky color. So I'm going to pull that into the blues to differentiate it from the prop fan. Hit accept. And then since you can see the glass here, I'm going to pull this over here, and I'm going to start selecting the panes of glass in the canopy. This is going to be a little tedious, but there are a lot of tedious operations when you're doing 3D. Yeah, you get a big chair muscle working in 3, but it is pretty, quote, labor intensive. Now, I'll zoom in real close and I'll just give you an idea of what's going on. These are going to be the frames for the canopy. These may or may not remain on the fuselage map because for lower levels of detail objects in Second Life, I may just make the entire glass a single piece and then map the canopy frames as opacities on that glass. But for the close-up model that we're going to have here, they're going to be 2 separate items. That way they'll have thickness and they'll have different material, so it will be easier for other users to apply custom camouflage without overpainting the glass. Okay, with all the glass selected, you go over to the glass material, right click on it and say assign material to selection. Now as you can see, it only did it to the main object but not the instance. So I can go over to the instance, right click in one of the dot shaded areas, select face, and then try to hit material selection, and that didn't work. Well, this is why it's an instance. I can go here to object mode, click it, delete it, and then I go up to edit, duplicate special, and what this does is this creates a -1 scale on the y-axis, x, y, z, and it mirrors it across the center. And that's why I built the model precisely in the center of the workspace. So if I go duplicate special, boom, it's there. And all my material assignments are there. So let's take a moment and look at the object. We'll turn off the wireframe overlay. And this gives us a good idea of how the materials are going to be organized. Oops, let's get that one out of the way. Okay, let me answer a couple questions in chat. Okay, if anybody has any questions, go ahead and ask. Okay, I'm getting a couple more questions. Oh, to invoke or put away your attribute editor, hold down Control A and it will cycle through. The question is, how dangerous is it that shift thing will select shit I don't want to? I don't know if dangerous is the word for it, but with each object you have your object mode, which allows you to move the entire object around or rotate it or scale it. But you have an undo, and that's a Control Z. Shift Z steps forward. So the other option you have is you have sub-objects. So I can select vertices, single vertices, edges, UVs, which we will cover very shortly, and faces. Well, if I select a lot of faces, as you can see, it goes up the line. It will select everything in that object if you allow it. But if you have a good idea and control of your face count, let's say I just want it to go up to the bend in the wing. So I would select all the faces over here with just a marquee select and just march them to the break in the wing. But as you can see, it's both sides. But it is a question, it is a pretty good question. One of the ways you can control that, like let's say you're selecting a group of faces and you don't want to select any of them on the back. Because if I do this and I want to select these two faces, accidentally I will have selected the ones on the bottom. Now I don't want to do that, so one of the tricks I can do is go back to object mode and I go up to display and I pull down to polygons and I turn on the option called backface culling. And what this does is this any face that is facing away from the camera is unselectable and is not displayed. So if I grabbed all of these faces here, instead of grabbing the ones on the bottom ones are clear, so that'll give you a bit of control as well. Now, with backface culling on, I think I'm going to start mapping the wing. So I'm going to select all these faces, actually get as high as I can, and select all the faces and then check the bottom to make sure I didn't get any of those. And it goes right up to the edge there. Ah, okay. Here's one thing I didn't want to do yet. This little piece here is for the landing light, and it's a piece of clear plastic. So I'm going to turn that material to glass. Glad I caught that. And here is an interesting point about material IDs. Because I want the glass to be on a completely separate map, I can actually select materials by select faces by materials, and I go back, put everything back into object mode, and I go to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade as normal, and I want to pull all the glass out. So I go right click on glass, and instead of going up to assign material to selection like we usually do, I go to the 3 o'clock position on the pie menu and hit select objects with that material. And as you can see, all the faces here are now highlighted. Now I go up to the command mesh and I go to extract. And if this works right, and it didn't, it did not extract. So I think what I have to do is I have to do it one at a time. So I go to object mode, and I select face, and then I go glass, select objects with that material, and because we're in the face sub-object mode, I go to mesh, extract, and it extracts those faces into a new object. In fact, it extracts them into several objects, I think. So, one, yes, every pane of glass is a new object. And because I extracted them, it has blown away the instance, because the instance no longer matches the object name of the original piece. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the wing and pull the glass out of it. So wing, go to face, right click on the material, go to the 3 o'clock position, select objects with material, and pop that out. Then I go back to object mode and I do this. And to keep the pieces, oops, I did not extract it. Select objects with material, go to mesh, and go to extract. So now we have the little clear piece for the landing light and the wing. Now that clear piece, as you can see, it's blown away the other wing. That clear piece is not on the other wing, it's only on the port side wing. But to keep things organized, I want to keep all the glass as one object. So I go to object mode and I select that. I hold down the shift key, or also the control shift key works, and just click every separate pane of glass. Your last selection is always green, your most recent selection. Every other one turns white after that. So there's all the glass. Then I go up to mesh and I go combine. And this combines all of the glass into now one object. And you can see we have separated canopy frames. So we'll go do that, return it to its place, and turn it off. Now, one of the ways that you can isolate objects so they're not selectable is to put them in layers. And I covered layers earlier, but if you want, I can go over that process again. But I'll do it very quickly here. Make a new layer, double click on that layer, name it. Always interesting. Can't have any spaces, but you can use underscore. But this I'm just going to call glass, and hit save. Well, as you can see, Maya doesn't like to have things that are the same name. So glass underscore layer. So I hit save. Now I select the glass object, I right click on the glass layer item, and I go add selected objects, and that adds it to the layer. As you can see, the objects are highlighted, and you can also see its pivot point. V means visibility. It's the same as the eye icon in Photoshop. So if I turn that off, it's gone. But let's say I want to keep it there for organizational sake. So I leave it visible, but if I hit template, it turns it to a gray wireframe. And a template means that, let's say I wanted to snap a vertex to it. Let's select a vertex, hit the move tool, hold down the V key for vertex snap, and I move the frame up. And it'll snap to the vertex. Changing T to R means reference layer. And as you can see, a reference layer is not selectable. The fuselage and the canopy frames are, but the layers aren't. So we'll go ahead and leave that to reference because we don't want to select that. Oh, dive brakes. Those should also be part of the wing. And with the file set up, we're ready to map. So I'm going to stop the recording so I can break this down because Livestream records in 40-minute blocks. So I'll be right back.